This is one of the worst cases of domestic assault I've ever heard of. So we have 41-year-old Jill Cahill and her 38-year-old husband Jeff Cahill. A quick history: Jill graduated from high school in 1975 and then went to a state agricultural and technology college. She met and married her husband, who was a contractor. James was raised in a very strict Catholic family, and he was very close with his family, and you will see as we go throughout this case that this closeness led his parents to protecting him. And it's crazy that he grew up in such a religious family when you see the actions of some of the family members. So anyways, the couple had a son named Timothy and a daughter named Mary, and they were 9 and 10 when our story begins. Jill had this landscaping job. She was making most of the money. She was the breadwinner, and she felt like Jeff wasn't really pulling his weight. Jeff had started to become super controlling of his wife and was always trying to tell Jill what to do. And to a certain point, he was becoming very controlling of his children as well. Jill was pushing back against these controlling ways. She felt like he just wanted to have complete control over everything, but she was the breadwinner. She was the one taking care of the kids, and their marriage just kind of started to fall apart. In 1998, they separated, but they didn't move out of the house. They were still living in the same home. Jill files divorce papers, and this infuriates Jeff, and he becomes very aggressive and violent towards his wife. Things are getting so bad that Jill tells her sister, "If Jeff kills me, you can have all my stuff." So Jill is trying to get herself and her children out of this situation. On April 21st, 1998, Jill and Jeff get into a huge fight. Jill begins to become concerned about her safety, and she goes into the bedroom to try to get away from Jeff. But Jeff isn't about to let Jill just hide in the bedroom, so he grabs an aluminum baseball bat and follows Jill into the bedroom. Jeff begins hitting Jill with the baseball bat repeatedly, and she is screaming for her children to call 911. And her children, who are in the home and witnessing this attack, are trying to run for the phone, and their dad grabs them and tells them to just go to their bedrooms. Jill would get away from him, and then he would grab her and drag her back to him. After he's done beating Jill, she is on the ground. She's bleeding. He calls his parents. He doesn't call 911. He calls his parents, and they show up. And she's still semi-conscious. She's moving a little bit. And they don't call 911. They call a family friend who's a doctor to see if maybe he can come fix Jill. The doctor comes in, takes one look at Jill, and knows she has been viciously beaten, so he calls police. Now when police show up, Jill is still alive. She's moaning a little bit, she's moving was taken back to the police station and questioned. So he tells police that Jill had started this argument and she had attacked him with a knife, and he was just defending himself. But police are not buying this story because you don't defend yourself with a baseball bat until the person is in a coma. Plus, there's all these smears of Jill's blood which show that he was just dragging her around. So eventually, Jeff admits that he was lying. Jill had never come at him with a knife. After he attacked Jill, he went into the kitchen and got a knife and stabbed himself a couple times so that it looked like there had been an attack. He also tells police that after he had beat her, he attempted suicide. He got a garden hose and put it in his exhaust and then turned his car on and had the garden hose going into his car. And police did find this when they went to the house initially, but then Jeff saw a rosary, and because he's so religious, he realized he couldn't kill himself. So then he called his parents, so we don't have any idea how long Jill was laying there before the doctor showed up and called 911. Jeff was arrested for first-degree assault. His bail is set at $100,000, and his family immediately bails him out. A family court made the decision that the Cahill children would be placed in the care of Jill's mother while Jill is in this coma. They also issued orders of protection for the children because the children had witnessed this all happening, so they obviously were not safe around their father. And they also said that Jeff was not allowed to go to the hospital where his wife was recovering. In order to try and keep Jill safe, Jeff Cahill's picture was plastered all over the hospital, and everyone who worked there knew he was not allowed inside. They all were made aware of the situation. Miraculously, Jill survives her attack, and this was not an easy recovery. She is fighting every single day to get a little bit better. She was in a coma for weeks, and then she was able to open her eyes, and eventually she was able to respond to doctors. After weeks, she remembered her children's names, so from April to October, she's in the hospital, slowly recovering. So while Jill is using every single grain of willpower she has to get better, Jeff is watching the hospital. He's noting shift changes. He's watching the habits of the hospital staff because Jeff wants to get inside that hospital. On October 27th, 1998, a nurse smells this strange odor as she enters Jill Cahill's hospital room, and she quickly realizes that Jill is having trouble breathing. She rushes to Jill and notices her fingers were burning when she touched Jill's sheets. There is this substance around Jill's mouth, and then Jill stops breathing. They call a code, and doctors rush in and begin working on Jill, but they have no idea what's happening with her body. Nothing is making sense. For hours, Jill fights for her life while physicians are literally trying everything possible to keep this woman alive. After suffering excruciating pain for hours, Jill dies the next morning. It would later be determined that Jill Cahill had been poisoned with potassium cyanide. Police immediately began pulling hospital surveillance and questioning staff. Soon, they have a timeline of what they believe happened. Jeff Cahill showed up at the hospital that night wearing this janitor's jumpsuit, a wig, and glasses, and with him he brought potassium cyanide. Police would later uncover that this murder had been planned for months. He had bought the cyanide 3 months earlier, and he was just waiting and watching for his opportunity to finally kill his wife. Hospital workers would tell police that they saw a man in a disguise. They didn't know it was Jeff, but they felt like something was off with this janitor. They noticed he was weird, but they didn't know who he was, and none of them put 2 and 2 together until Jill Cahill had been murdered. He makes his way into Jill's room, and once inside, he forces cyanide down her throat. Jeff was arrested quickly afterward. Police get search warrants, and they begin digging for anything that they need to put this guy away for life. His search history showed he had looked up how cyanide worked and where to get it. They also found a partially burned wig and a bottle of cyanide hidden in a cinder block in the backyard of his home. There were 4 letters that showed police exactly how Jeff had obtained the cyanide in the first place. In July, he had used this fake letter with a fake letterhead to contact this local electroblading company, and basically he used this electroblading company's information that he got from them to then contact a lab to order cyanide through the lab and have it delivered to this company, and then he intercepted the package. So when the UPS guy is delivering the cyanide, he is like, "Oh, I work here, I'll just take it." And he takes the package and goes and gets in his car. And the guy didn't call police right away, which he should have done, but he knew something weird was going on. So he gets this guy's license plate number, and he calls the company, and the company is like, "We haven't ordered any cyanide." So the company contacts police, and they give police the license plate number. The license plate number was then traced back to a member of Jeff Cahill's family, and this guy, who is out on bail for almost murdering his wife, is ordering cyanide. And for whatever reason, police don't look into this. They don't follow up on it. But they had 3 months to follow up on this, because there were 3 months from the time he got the cyanide to the time he killed Jill. And they just didn't do anything. So it wasn't like he got the cyanide and ran and murdered his wife. 90 days go by. Police do nothing. And I feel like they obviously really dropped the ball with this. On November 19th, 1998, Jeff was indicted by a grand jury on 2 counts of first-degree murder. The first count was murder to keep Jill from testifying against him for the assault charge, and the second count was for murdering Jill during a burglary. And this is kind of weird wording, but basically because he broke into the hospital to murder her, this was considered burglary. His trial began in August of 1999, and it lasted 1 week. The prosecution had a ton of evidence against Jeff. I mean, this is a slam dunk case. They bring in the nurse who worked at the hospital brings in 21 character witnesses at his sentencing, trying to show what a good guy Jeff is. 10 days later, Jeff Cahill was sentenced to death by lethal injection for both murder counts. It later came out that Jeff had been offered a plea deal that would have given him life in prison, but it would have removed the death penalty, but Jeff refused to take this deal. Then, Jeff's lawyers filed an appeal in 2003, and the New York Court of Appeals overturned the death sentence in Jeff's case. They said that the trial judge had made an error when he screened the jurors, and they also said that Jeff had been convicted of murder for witness elimination because basically during the trial they had said the reason he was killing Jill was to keep her from testifying against him. But the court said in order to use witness elimination as a charge, you have to have this really important factor. You have to prove that is the only reason that they want the person dead. So basically they're saying, did Jeff kill Jill so she couldn't testify, or did he kill her because he wanted her dead? The court said there were multiple motives for Jeff wanting Jill dead, and that if they couldn't prove the only motive was witness elimination, then they couldn't charge him for that. They said Jeff had confessed to the crime, and the prosecutors had such a strong case against him already that killing Jill wouldn't really have made the difference in the outcome of the case. Like, him killing Jill wouldn't mean he would get to go free. So instead of having 2 second-degree murder charges, they drop it to 1 count of second-degree murder. So Jeff has to be re-sentenced, and in 2004 he was re-sentenced and he got 25 years to life for the murder of Jill Cahill and 12 to 25 for the assault. So his sentences have to be served concurrently, and he will be eligible for parole in 2036 after 37 years in prison, and he will be 75 years old. Timothy and Mary Cahill, Jill's children, ended up being raised by their grandmother in New York. After this all happened, Jill's family championed for a law called Chilly's Law. They wanted to make it harder for